And this is Blake Hull with Knowledge Infusion, and I would like to thank you for joining us today. Today, Knowledge Infusion experts will be presenting a webinar about building a flexible HR technology architecture. Quick things before we begin. First, today's program is presented via integrated computer-based audio. If you have any problems with the technology, please chat into the screen and we will assist you. The backup for the event should be posted here on the screen in just a moment. And you may want to jot that number down just in case you experience any issues with your audio. Common questions we get is, can we get a copy of the slides? And the answer to that question is, of course. You will receive an email with instructions on how to download both the slides as well as a replay that you can share with your colleagues after today's event. Today's event to be interactive and to answer any questions or challenges you may have. So please post any comments at any time during the event by clicking on the lower right-hand corner of your screen in the Q&A panel. We're monitoring the Q&A panel and taking time throughout the event to respond to questions as well as saving time at the end for discussion. You know the Q&A panel is working by typing in what HR technologies your organization is using or is currently implementing today. You also follow today's discussion on Twitter at #KIWebinar. I would like to introduce today's presenters. Jason Corsello, if you could advance slides to slide 4, please. I'm Jason Corsello, Senior Vice President of Corporate Development and Strategy for Knowledge Infusion on the line. Jason, can you hear me okay?
Hi, good afternoon.
Hey, thanks for joining us. And I have Jason Averbook, Knowledge Infusion Chief Executive Officer, also on the line. Jason, thank you for joining us.
Blake, thank you very much. Mr. Corsello, how are you today?
I'm self.
Good, thanks.
With no further ado, Jason Averbook, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Great, thanks very much, Blake. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone joining the webinar today. Thank you very much for joining, as Blake said. I'm very excited to present the topic that we're talking about today, which is the building flexible HR technology architectures. During that, we're going to talk about a number of different topics. We'll go over that in a second here. Really quickly, for those that haven't been on a Knowledge Infusion webinar before, high level, who is Knowledge Infusion? Knowledge Infusion is a full-service consulting organization really made up in delivering our consulting in 2 different ways. Through full-service project-based consulting, which is typical consulting on site with you and your team, and our on-demand, which is the industry's leading on-demand inquiry and content source when it comes to HR and HR technology. So very excited to deliver technology in both ways. What we're doing today is talk about technology more than anything, but one of the things that's very important about the way that we approach consulting is that our consulting is very much tied to a people, process, technology methodology. So while today we're talking about technology, we're not going to spend a lot of time on change management, governance, process transformation. Understand normally that's where we do spend most of our time, with the technology being the enabler. If you look at the types of things that Knowledge Infusion does, we really start our consulting with a technology strategy in helping organizations understand what they have, what they need going forward into the future. Many times we end up going to the left of this chart and helping organizations actually craft their HR strategy and talent management strategy. How do they design an organization and how do they deliver services? And then we actually understand their technology strategy, help them with business process work all the way through the implementation, the integration, and deployment of those technologies that they pick. So when I say full service, it's everything from helping develop those HR strategies, all making sure that that strategy gets implemented, and making sure that strategy can be measured and show the results. Our organization's been around 6 years, so it's our 6th year today. Headquartered in Minneapolis, Minnesota, with a little bit old slide, about 350 global customers around the world. So excited to work with the types of customers we have. Many of you are on. Many are new customers or new prospects to the KI family. So welcome as well. Today, I want to talk about 5 key things, and Jason and I are going to go back and forth on these. There'll be a little bit of banter, and really, you guys, your questions and your Q&A chat will help a ton. So someone said they're on Oracle HRMS, someone said they're on SAP, someone said they're on the PeopleSoft base with talent management being built out, someone else is on Ceridian. Great feedback. Keep that coming. We're going to talk about the importance of technology agility and why it's so important today and why more important than ever. How technology meets those business demands today, how to achieve HR technology alignment, and why alignment is so important. Understanding how to adapt and when to change, and supporting your future needs. About this, I think you guys have been following along that through the last 2 or 3 months, there are tremendous acquisitions and market movement in the space. It takes 24 hours. The INFOR acquisition of LAWSON and the SuccessFactors acquisition of Plateau have been major movements in the space that we're going to talk to throughout the webinar as well today. So once again, thanks for joining. We'll go on to the next slide. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jason Corsello. Jason?
Great, thank you, Jason. And what I wanted to do is start off with this isn't necessarily a polling question, but just a general question of 83%. And I'd love to get people's response in the chat column here of what do you think 83% is? Is that the number of companies that are deploying talent management strategies? What do you think that number is? Is that the mere increase that Jason Averbrook received last year? I spent a few minutes of asking you to think about that and jumping into that response, because 83% is a big number. So I see some of those responses coming in. Does your solution meet 80% of the needs? I'm going to fast forward here and give you an answer. 83% is actually a number of organizations, or more specifically CEOs, that responded that will changing their firm's talent management strategy in the next 12 months. So huge, huge number to me, hopefully, or maybe it may not be a huge, huge number to you. But a ton of organizations today are going through massive change, not only to their corporate strategy, but also their people and talent strategy. And as you can see from the top down through organizations, is there's going to be significant change over the next 12 plus months to adapt their strategies, to adapt their people and talent strategies to their corporate strategies. And I think what that means is a significant shift in terms of how their technology supports that strategy. Do you see that the same within organizations that you're talking to?
Oh, totally. In fact, the organization I'm working with here in D.C. today, the exact same thing. I mean, we're seeing the focus being much more on the strategic talent management component than on the core HR component. Well, core HR is really important and the foundational is really important. People are starting to say, guys, what we have to do is we have to get to what is strategic this time, because we didn't get to it the last couple times we've tried this, and don't get to it this time, we're going to have a job. Now that we're back to the picture of house here, I'll let you describe what that means.
This is the easiest way I can define a lot of organizations' technology strategies today. Hopefully many of you are chuckling. Maybe you're not chuckling. But what's fascinating is this is how we've seen a lot of technology strategies evolve. And right, wrong, or indifferent, a lot of good technology has been put on bad technologies. I was talking earlier to a colleague of, I don't know if many people have seen the show, or used to be on MTV, called Pimp My Ride. Very similar to that, where people in 1979 Buick that they wrap a lot of bells and whistles around, and I think that's to some extent what we've seen with a lot of technology strategies is there's been a legacy system that people put a lot of things on top. And that's okay. Maybe you love your 1979 Buick, but conversely is in a lot of cases you're not getting value of modern performance, modern technology, modern things that are happening in the world, and have compromised the strategy to some extent to kind of put some bolt-ons and fill in gaps and end the investments very incrementally. Today it's very different. Companies have a huge, huge opportunity, potentially leveraging legacy legacy technology, also evolving from that technology. I had a fascinating discussion with an MBA student from Columbia this morning, and what was fascinating is we came to the conclusion that we're at an interesting stage. We're at that kind of 10-year evolution of technology in which the technology is seeing a significant shift. What's happening at the foundation and how companies can really rethink what they're doing. But one of the challenges that we've seen, or a number of challenges that we've seen with organizations, is there's a lot of really strong intent when they're starting off a new project or thinking about their technology architecture from the go. As they're being built, it changes, which is just to really accomplish maybe a small need in terms of addressing a point solution or a point need versus addressing big corporate needs. And these are a couple of examples that I've shared here. Is oftentimes what we see is companies need very specific, driven, outcome-based solutions. What they ultimately deliver are process and transaction-type systems. The whole, a lot of technology deployments in the past 12 months is really to create engagement. Well, what they've ultimately done is they've actually just created another system of record, missing out on that opportunity to really engage the workforce and the employees. In addition to that, what we've seen is need for technology to be employee-centric. Ultimately, what happens is it becomes another HR tool for HR's sake. And a couple of things here, probably the most important down at the bottom here is very ambitious at the start, and as companies get into the weeds, they get stuck in what I'll call the HR buzzword bingo. Instead of really shaping the story, telling the story, and really telling that story how it aligns to the organization. So, again, I think now is an interesting opportunity to say, let's kind of rethink what that architecture looks like, what we've done right, what we've done not so good, and really how do we build off of the things that are really delivering value today. I'll shut up here in a second, but one thing before I turn over to Jason to get his thoughts is one of the things you'll be hearing from me a couple of times today is the word platform. Platform is, I think, a new thought. Maybe it's not a new thought, but it's a new concept I think a lot of organizations need to start to think about. Less feature function and more platform, and I'll describe that in a second. But Jason, what else am I missing out on here?
You're exactly right. Where companies struggle with this HR technology is really, you're what's needed and what built is on. I think the other thing that's really important is to come up with what are the measures and what are the outcomes that I actually want to see before I start. So what do I actually want to get out of this? True quantitative numbers and not savings, but what do I want to see? And make sure that I'm constantly thinking about every single step that I take, whether or not I'm going to be able to measure to that. Because if you do, you're going to have those outcomes. If you don't, you're going to have VPs of HR and CIOs and CFOs say, we spent a lot of money, we didn't get what we banked on.
Is it come a go live?
And not go live. Go live is one step. If your success factor, not using a vendor's name, but if your success factor is go live, you shouldn't start.
What we've done is we've listed a couple of questions. This is a subset of many questions that you asked, but these are actually 4 questions that I thought of companies as they're going through this rethinking of their technology stack. Is 4 simple questions. The first is, does it make sense for discrete HR technologies to be sitting out on an island? What that actually means is, are you still using siloed technology that is basically operating by itself, not quote-unquote integrated to other solutions? If you do have stuff that's sitting out on the island, I think it'd be very wise of you to rethink about using that technology on an ongoing basis. Maybe some specific needs. If it's the learning solution that's delivering compliance and financial services, that may be something that is okay to sit out on an island. But I would venture to guess that 90% of your other technology should not be sitting out on an island. So something to think about is how integrated is it today, or does it need to be? The second is around the technology vendor's ability to support your current or future ecosystem. What does that mean? Well, that means a couple of things. It means, can the technology platform be able to integrate easily other third-party applications, where it's top of the application, or being able to have to write a third-party extension to the application. This is where I think the future is definitely going in terms of a platform, is this ability to easily integrate other solutions, as well as the ease to write extensions on top of the platform. So can you do that today? Do they have the technology muster, if you will, to do that? This is really around configuration. How easy is it to configure? And we see companies that deploy and sit back for 2 or 3 years and don't touch the technology. My view is if you're not touching that technology every month, do any sort of update, any sort of configuration update, and if the technology doesn't allow you to do it instead of a third party, that's something to reconsider. This bullet here, and these aren't limited to just the 4, but the last bullet here is around really looking at how the data flows within the organization. The other statement is you have data conflict. What this is, do you have multiple profiles that are rendering different types of information? This is a big, big opportunity when you're rethinking the architecture to think about, one is how does the data flow, but really how do you mitigate that risk of having duplicate conflicting data sitting in different technology applications. What did I miss, Jason?
Jason, question. It's a similar question, but I was going to, it's along the same lines. What I ask is, how many times is entered? How many times does name get entered by the HR function when you bring someone into the organization? I'd love to people just type in the Q&A how many times name gets entered. Anyway, if name gets entered once, you're 50% successful. Name gets entered 0 times, you're 100% successful because it's coming from the applicant system. Love to see what people are thinking, but truly, when we start to think about, do we have our data flows defined? If we're entering name more than once, our data flows aren't defined, and that's a great statement right there that we're not using the technology the way that we should be. Now, the exciting thing is there's 4 people that have come on and said the name is entered once or twice. And someone said 0, which is great. Interesting. I wonder if the other 170 people that are on, besides 5 that have answered, have higher numbers than 1.
Well, enough, the 0 comes from a knowledge infusion client.
That's a good thing.
Intent. No. Oh, thank you, Jason. I agree with you. Absolutely. So a couple of things moving forward here around what's the next generation. This is always something I like to encourage our clients to look at, is what's next? How do you kind of predict what the road looks like? And I think we're actually, in this 10-year cycle, the last 10 years, I think, has been focused a lot around automation, process automation. Really, where we're heading to is a industry based on intelligence, and that's based on a lot of information that's sitting within your system today to more accurately, render insight to you instead of you having to go fetch for it. But this is, I think, the big shift that's starting to occur. It's really at its infancy, but it's moving beyond automation to really, focus on the next steps. And here's a couple of things here of what's next. So, as you mentioned, focusing on the outputs. What do you measure? What's the success or measure of success? Of really trying to figure out what's the right optimal process flow. This is around looking at creating some global standards with local flexibility. I'll let you describe that in a second, Jason, because I think that's an important one. Third is really simplification. Right? So much opportunity to simplify processes. Third is around platform. Too many organizations that we see get so focused in the feature function capability when, more importantly, they can be out looking at a platform that could probably make that assessment of the feature function even better. Meaning, hey, why not use this platform to really redefine our process instead of saying, can it do X, Y, or Z that may be a suboptimal process? And the last bullet here is around collaboration. Some great opportunities that are starting to emerge around leveraging collaboration within organizations. Jason, do you want to talk on the global one for a second?
Yeah, I think the thing that's really important here is we have organizations that try to overcomplicate this every day. Our processes have to be global and global across the board. There are very few HR processes, if any, and the ones are there have to do with talent and talent management, such as succession and global talent mobility, that actually require the exact same process globally. So one of the things that we encourage HR to do is to stop even trying to do that and truly to get the personalized approach, which is what does each country need to be successful, what from a corporate standpoint or headquarters standpoint to be successful, and what's the best way to do that. But global process standardization, it will happen in HR to the degree that it's been tried in many organizations. What's really important about this slide is this really starts to get to the SuccessFactors Plateau acquisition from yesterday. SuccessFactors has done a very good job in automation. Plateau, a very good job in automation. What that acquisition really does is it combines automation of a performance process, automation of learning processes, into a whole new ecosystem of talent management and talent intelligence that truly lets me focus on outputs, measures, how integration happens, how I'm combining social in with it, et cetera, et cetera. So, you take a look at that, and you take a look at the number of customers that a SuccessFactors has in the performance management side, and you look at what they've added with Plateau, all of a sudden you start to say, wow, this market is going to change, and it's going to change rapidly.
Great. I think this gets us to our first polling question here. I'd love for everyone to kind of fill out our question here. Do you feel your HR technology stack has become more simple or more complex in the past 24 months? So take a few minutes here. Hopefully fill out the question, and then we'll continue to move along. Take this next section around achieving HR technology alignment.
Yeah, I would love to. And one of the things, when we actually look at the results here, 55% say that it's become more complex, 30% say it hasn't changed, 15% says it's more simple. That's crazy. I mean, it's crazy, and we're going to talk about alignment here in a second, but when you actually look at what technology has done to make it more simple, the fact that only 15% actually feel that it is more simple, that shows the amazing opportunity there is for all of us to get better at making this simple. So I achieve that, and I use this cartoon all the time. Can anyone here remember what our core business is? Why do we do this? Why are we doing any of this stuff? And of course, some people say to get paid. The way is that we can get employees paid. Why are we doing anything that we do in the human resource function? One of the things that's very, very important, and I'll tie this to it, is how do I align? In the work that we do every single day with clients from a strategy map standpoint, and we built hundreds of these strategy maps, alignment is what drives success. Understand what your HR technology strategy is, which is at the bottom here. I have to understand what my HR goals and objectives are. In order to do that, I have to understand my overall corporate goals. Don't start at the top and work my way down, but I start at them and work my way up. It's going to have major disconnects guaranteed. So when we look at what's it going to take, to actually be successful using any HR technology, and to make it more simple, it is an understanding of how what I do from a technology standpoint impacts those corporate goals. Now, how do you do that? You need to the business. When we do strategy maps, we spend 30% of our time talking to HR, 30% of the time talking to IT, 40% of the time talking to the business. We do that because the business needs to say, here's what we need. And if you have business buy-in, all of a sudden, anything you try to do from an HR strategy standpoint and an HR technology strategy standpoint is that much more simple. Your business case right there because the business is saying it. Not the business, should I upgrade? If business, should I write a custom report? Ask the business, should I do a custom interface? What are they going to say? No. They hear business objectives that they need solved. Our job, as this history, is to figure out how to translate that into the technology needs. So all of you all should have guiding principles. And from our technology standpoint, what are your guiding principles? And here's three that we use in an existing client. Managing your workforce. What does that mean? Increase usability. What does that mean? And HR capabilities through HR transformation. Okay, those three key things. Now, you all should have your guiding principles. These guiding principles should be laminated and in front of you every single day. And if doing something that's not part of these guiding principles, A, why, B, I'd figure out how to get out of it, and C, I would make sure that from a go-forward standpoint, the organization understands the value of what you're doing. This is the key reasons that we say the HRIS function shouldn't exist. As a function shouldn't exist, but a process and technology function that actually drives business value is really where we're at in 2011. JC, do you have something to that?
Well, I was going to pose it back to you. There's an interesting question that came through Twitter here that says, as HR technology industry keeps changing, are things getting easier or better for HR departments and end users? Care to
great.
answer that?
So are things getting better for the HR departments or users? Is that what the question is?
For HR departments and end users.
Yeah, so great question. So I'll answer the question is it depends how you use the technology. If you use the technology and think that out of the box, any one vendor is going to solve your problem and make it easy for an end user, you're approaching it the wrong way. One of the things that Jason Corsello mentioned earlier on in this webinar is this whole concept of exposing services. And I'm happy to have longer conversations about that because it truly is where technology is going. But how through the use of portal technology and how through the use of business intelligence technology take all of these HR technology systems that are out there and basically expose single user interfaces and single output mechanisms and have people going into 5, 10, 15 different systems and different interfaces. So to answer your question, the technology and what's happened and the acquisitions that have happened have definitely made it easier. If you're still rolling out the technology, and you've done it in the past, the same way you did PeopleSoft, Oracle, SAP, it's not going to make any difference in the world.
I'll add a comment here. Is I think we've seen a huge focus on the user or usability, I'll use synonymously, over the past 3 years, and I think what we've witnessed is the users haven't come. So I think there's a rethinking, and I'll show some responses to our survey in a second here. But organizations have gotten smarter to say, they're not coming because we're not delivering them any value at the foundation. We're not delivering what they need. So what they need from a data perspective, from a integrated process perspective, and then hopefully they'll show up. So I think there's actually a fairly significant shift that's happening today to us that it may look nice and have lots of bells and whistles and buttons and things like that, but still not delivering the core needs from a foundational perspective.
Great point. So here's some examples. One things, managing our workforce, making sure a talent acquisition platform that's in place, making sure talent management capabilities in place, making sure I can benchmark jobs better. How do I increase usability? Making sure leveraging my suite better from a finality standpoint and using more of it that's there. And manager adoption of platforms. As to the driving HR capabilities, how am I doing that and what are my plans? So, I'm going to skip over these really quickly, but you can see the concept is no matter what you're doing, you come back to your guiding principles so that you ensure that you have alignment. The other that I just want to show really quickly here is that as you start to look at what this looks like, you start to design schemas. The schemas are things that we design for organizations to say, based on the type of employee, the managers, how do they get single access to a system? How do I leverage service-oriented architecture and business intelligence? And how many platforms do I need to pull from? Now, once again, to the users, to the managers, where are they going? One spot. Underlying stuff here, back here, that really is going to drive the usability.
So there's a couple questions that have come in I'm going to take while we're on this slide. How to implement HRMS in a manufacturing sector where technology does not come natural to a worker. We do this every day, and the question is, from a pace and tempo of change standpoint, is value in rolling out something to the worker? Don't roll out self-service just to roll out self-service. If you roll out service just to say you've checked in your box, it'll kill you. You have to say what's the value to the worker, mark the value to the worker. And in the manufacturing sector, the value is, hey, I can see my time sheet online. I can view my paycheck online. I cannot talk to someone. I cannot go in to talk to someone. I can do something 24/7. Every single industry you have to find out, and it's not just industry, every single company you have to find out exactly what those drivers are. So do this really quick. Notice there's end user schema, there's systems schema, which is how my systems integrate and where do they integrate. And this gets into more how am I using the service-oriented architecture. Once again, you saw some of the things in the Success Factors Plateau release yesterday that said they're written on the same technology stack. Why is that important? Because I use service-oriented architecture to integrate those much faster than I can. I've got applications that are written in different technology stacks, which takes me to this technical integrated portal schema, which is saying, from a portal standpoint, how am I pulling everything, middleware, transitions, business intelligence, up to this same level? Now, what does this have to do with business value? To do with business value is you are putting information in the hands of the business. They are no longer looking at HR to drive things, no longer waiting for HR to drive things. They are thinking that HR is their only way to get information. And if you're doing these sorts of designs and you think your architecture up front before you do any implementation, you often realize it's very easy to put these things in the hands of users, A. B, it's very easy to make your whole approach simple versus what we said 85% complex. JC?
One last thought. It's never been easier than today from a technology perspective. Not that it's easy, but there's been, through cloud-based computing, vendors that are opening up their APIs, multi-tenancy that allows companies to really create standards from a data fields perspective, from a schema perspective, from a workflow perspective. It's a great time to start to rationalize how all of these things work together, how you can leverage web services instead of building one-off interfaces. The question is ultimately one, putting that strategy in place, and I think as I saw someone refer to in the Twitter stream, is to go back to it, continuing to update it, but continue to stay, redefine the theme or stay on track of the theme. Secondly is to make sure that you have the necessary investment to do it. There's an investment that gets thrown around today irrationally, and an opportunity to start to rationalize those investments. Here's why we need to do web services instead of continuing to build the one-off interfaces.
Great, Jason. So, there's a couple other questions that have come in. One around the push towards consumer-style use cases. I'd love to get some more information about what that question is. This thing that came in really ties into employee track cases. One thing that's really important about this whole concept is that because putting in place a single user interface and trying to do that through service-oriented architecture, I also need to have the help desk tools and call center tools to be able to let employees understand where their actual case is, where the actual incident is, so that they're not calling their friend in HR. And like I can do when I'm checking the status of a bank account, or just like I can do when I'm checking the status of a FedEx or UPS package, I'm actually being able to check on the status of my cases. So once again, through service-oriented architecture, I can tie a help desk directly into what I'm doing from a call center standpoint, directly what I'm doing in from a transactional standpoint, and even from an employee direct access standpoint, let them ask questions into the knowledge base versus have them call HR. Service-oriented architecture and the way you architect your technology makes this possible. One of the things we oftentimes have customers say is, I'd love to put in a call center tool, but I can't do it because I have so many different systems. That's not the answer. You can do it even with a lot of systems, as long as you architect those correctly from the start.
I'll add one last thing into that is through the use of collaboration technologies, all of a sudden you can have employees addressing employee questions. Huge, huge value, in my opinion.
Yeah, the clarification on the question came in. As we were chatting about self-service, one of the things. First of all, within Knowledge Infusion, we don't even call it self-service; we call it direct access. The second thing is that if we see an organization say, in phase 1, you should roll this out to the HR department. In phase 2, you should roll out self-service or direct access. That's not enough to tell you you're going in the wrong direction from the start. There's sure a case where you're not rolling out direct access first, even rush to go live. Because unlikely what's going to happen is you're going to start down the wrong path. You're going to be able to get direct access out there. The expectation is, through the consumer world, that people will use these technologies. So if you start off wrong, you're never going to recover. And in 2 years, when your software as a service contract's up, you're going to be saying, we need to replace this. The adoption's low. Well, adoption's low because the start of it was launched incorrectly. So, great question that just came in I have to get to before I answer this, or before we move on. Why not using self-service terms? The reason trying to use self-service terms is there's full service and there's self-service. Most people question when you start to use self-service, well, it used to be full service, now it's self-service. When they pump gas, they'd rather pump gas full service than self-service. What we try to do is not make it seem like service, make it seem like what we're trying to do is give employees and managers direct access to the information that they need to do jobs better without actually thinking about this, now I have to do it myself. It's a derogatory term in most organizations, and we've seen major adoption increases as people brand it as direct access versus the term self-service. So let's really quick what we need. And this is one of the things we hear often in every organization. We can't figure out what we need. We can't figure out if what we have can do the job. And one of the things that's really important to understand is probably in 70% of the cases, the technology you already have do what you're looking for it to do. Now you may have bastardized it so much that it can't do it anymore. It's easy to use in the solution, but one thing that's urgently important is come up with what are my prioritizations. Looking for prioritizations, what should lead there is business impact. What should lead next is urgency. Now, things this way, I should say, wow, the urgency because I'm going to be hiring 800 new people is high in talent acquisition. The business impact is also going to be high. That has a higher weighted average than doing competency management. Even someone down the hall is screaming at you because competencies have been on the priority list for a long time. From an impact standpoint and an urgency standpoint, it didn't meet the need. It didn't cut to the same level. So very important from a governance standpoint that as an HR technologist, which you are, whether you understand technology or not, that you're going through this effort frequently and say, am I still working on the right things? This should be your gauge as to working on the right things. So that at the end of a period, I come back and say, hey, this is how we calculated it. We all agreed to this. Learning management, in this case, is low. Don't come later and knock me because we didn't do anything in learning management. Tie that back to how they're grouped together. People don't work well with these big, long lists. They work with short lists. So what are the three things that I'm going to focus on? Core platform, talent management, and analytics. And to that, I'm going to do A, B, and C. Now, we actually think about the technology foundation one of the things that we think about is how does it look? When you look at the screen here and you see the blocks, it's important that you break these up from a usability standpoint into what is the pace and tempo of change in each of these areas. So let's take the top. How often would you want a portal to change or your intranet to change? For a website, and it stays the same for too long, you probably don't go back. Same thing with this whole digital HR framework. If it stays the same, you're not going to go back, and adoption is going to be low. How often do we have changes to some of these other areas, such as the core HR foundation? We make changes, which we do. We may not have a whole new set of new capabilities. How many times do I have changes to my payroll process? I don't have changes, I have to put in a whole new application. When I start looking at my talent management applications, like my talent acquisition, my performance management, or I start looking at analytics, I have changes happening in those spaces every single day. From recruit via Twitter to all performance and management being combined into a single platform by SuccessFactors Plateau or by Cornerstone, by others out there in the marketplace. I have a organization like Workday who's doing a great job driving a core HR and talent management together and moving fast. Their development processes are fast. It's fast enough for me. So what's really important here is you don't get locked, and I'm going to say this boldly, don't get locked in, or don't get locked to something that needs to be agile. Okay? And we can pretty much know from a business driver standpoint what needs to be agile and what needs to be sort of timeless in nature. And as you look at it, the agile components are really talent management, talent intelligence, and digital HR. Areas, stabilize, get them there, get them solid, get the foundation done, and let the rest of the ecosystem feed off of them. If you're currently upgrading the core, you're creeping around with the core, you're never going to get the strategic pieces done. JC?
Yeah, I mean, you just had a few things here. One thing that's important to note is all of these processes that you see that are underpinnings of a technology foundation affect each other. So I'll give you an example here. In your core HR foundation, you've probably some sort of organizational structure, job codes. Well, within that should dramatically affect what you're using a talent management application. So what's important to it is in this process, there's a lot of things that process flow upstream, that flow downstream, that affect each other. So it's not just deploying these things in siloed natures, but making sure that you're taking advantage of what the foundation is placed today, and some springboard off of that into the new things that you're deploying. Huge missed opportunity for a lot of organizations. They rush the application because they have a set date that they say they need to go live, as we talked earlier, but they miss those key foundational building blocks that really ultimately determine success.
Now, great. So when we rethink this technology foundation, what are we doing? We're shifting from legacy interfaces to integrations. If you're still using the term interfaces, I'd question. In some cases, it makes sense, but truly, how can I get rid of that to make my stack more simple? How can I make sure that I'm tying in to business intelligence functions? So make sure that I've got those pieces in place. I've got the ability to measure, and I'm not measuring out of my one system. The function continues to get less support from IT. What do you mean? Is there in your organization? Simplification of where data is stored to get the intelligence is going to continue to be more critical. Fewer functions will be leveraged going forward. What does that mean, and how does it affect you? And finally, the realization that the HR function is ripe for process integration across its function, more across the enterprise. And what does that mean? Some of you have seen the press release we did today. I truly think that we're seeing a generational change in front of our eyes in the last 3 months in HR technology. And that we're truly seeing ERP, the integrations between HR, finance, and manufacturing, being much, much less to an department then integrating itself to itself, in recruiting, to talent management, to the core, to the portal, and to business intelligence. HR probably doesn't belong in an ERP system. An ERP system should take data from HR, but at the speed which HR changes, HR needs to be integrated, and ERP hasn't and didn't meet the needs. How do you rationalize this investment? What is the why? Get the business to build the business case. Now, what do I mean by that? Many will build a business case in HR that truly should be called an HR case, not a business case. A case has to have something that's a business driver tied to it. The platform, not feature. Because once you love the feature today, but look fast technology changes. Think about the time and investment that it actually takes to do this stuff, and once I get the business to actually sell the business case. So, being said about your existing technology, please, polling question to the right, does my existing investment in HR technologies meet the needs of my organization today? Not feature function, that's platform, that's vision, that's integrations, that's portal, and that's business intelligence.
If I can add, as people are filling that out, one of the things I want to highlight is the middle one there, evaluate the platform. This may be a bold statement, but I think, today is an opportunity to build a HR strategy that has legs beyond 3 years, that you're looking at 3 to 5 years, simply because a lot of what we're seeing today amongst the vendor landscape has tremendous depth of technology. The technology is changing very rapidly. The platforms are being put in place, that there's a lot of opportunity long-term that organizations should be looking at the few vendors that they've determined that these are our quote-unquote vendors of choice we're going to build long-term with. And I wouldn't have said that probably even 12 months ago, but I think today with what's happened through the consolidation of the marketplace, there are a handful of very, very good vendors out there that I think organizations should really, really think about looking long-term with, building off of it. And what that also means is really understanding their roadmap and where they're going so they plan along with that.
So it's amazing, and I say amazing because it's just an amazing opportunity. We have 64% that their existing investment doesn't meet their needs. We have 20% that don't know. So let's take even half of that. That's at least 75% of the 200 people on this call where their existing investment doesn't meet their needs. Now, it's what's scary, but most important is it's time to re-architect. It's re-architect, and the time is now. Technologies are there, middleware there, so it's now to be able to do that. So let's talk quickly, JC, about sort of supporting your future needs, and make sure we save time at the end for questions as well as some commentary on some of these acquisitions that have happened in the last couple of days. Yeah,
so really quickly, I mean, as you can see in the chart, I think, as you've mentioned, today organizations are at that inflection, right? Do they continue to be very process-centric, complexity type of HR organizations, or do they actually flip the needle here and say, you know what, we're really going to look at driving not just efficiency, but driving effectiveness? And that gets to, how do you measure it? How do you have intelligence so information is being delivered to employees and managers and not that it's just a traditional transactional process? This is that opportunity. I have never seen it more so than I have in the past 7-8 years. But I think amongst the landscape is that, as I've mentioned, there's vendors that are partly the way they're today, but have roadmaps to get there in the future. And those are the ones that I think organizations should be taking a hard look at to figure out how do you make that investment. One of the things that we're seeing, as I talked about earlier, is smarter thinking. No longer is it the focus on usability, ease of use, is the button in the right place and things like that, but really looking at that integrated data and process. So the information is being delivered. It's being delivered to the right person at the right time, very personalized to their job, their role, their outcomes. In terms of the trends in HR technology, I think we've touched on a couple of these, but this is where we're going in these 4 areas. And some vendors are getting there faster than others, but I classify them in 4: mobile, social, cloud, and analytics. We don't have enough time to go through each one of these today. Happy to talk about it after, or maybe it makes sense to do a follow-on webinar. But mobile is becoming very, very important. It means many things to many organizations, but how do you deliver information to different users and different devices? How do you deliver information to your workforce that uses iPhones versus your executives that uses iPads? Social collaboration, big things. So we're going to figure out how people work with an organization. Cloud computing, I touched on that a little bit, but really simplifying some of the ease of deployment, really simplifying and really the ability to iterate over time. And the last, and probably I think the most important, is around analytics. How do you drive meaningful information, actionable information to the user at the right point of time? So these that are coming down the road, a lot of organizations and a lot of vendors are investing very, very rapidly. But these are back to the platform question. These are things that I care about, and I think a lot of organizations should care about more so than, can the application do cascading goals 7 layers down? That may be important to you, but is that going to move the needle within your organization? Maybe, maybe not. Here, before we can hopefully open it up to some good Q&A, is around the talent management suite. I think we have started to see the shift. We started this last year around people really looking at that single vendor or the handful of vendors that are going to deliver the most needs. So really making that investment towards the platform play, the vendor that they can build long-term off of. It may not do everything, and it probably won't do everything that you want it to do. This is going to do a lot of those things in terms of being able to do that integration, looking at the future of deploying mobility and things like that. And I think we're seeing that, and we're seeing that change in spades very quickly. With that said, we've got 5 or 10 minutes here. Most notably, we've seen some significant events in the last 24 hours and in the last few months that I think have significant impacts on the market. But I have your thoughts, Jason, around both what we're seeing around 2 fairly significant and very different acquisitions in the past 24 hours.
Yeah, it's funny when people on these webinars, they're both all of the Q&A and all of the tweets I'd like Jason to address. And the good thing is when we're both Jason, I can just turn it back over to you, right? No, I'm just kidding. No, but when you look at these 2 acquisitions or mergers that have happened, I mean, this is and I think I've been fairly outspoken probably in the last 24 hours about this, both in a press release, the SuccessFactors Plateau release. We're a big shift. I mean, there's no this market that wouldn't say that the last 24 hours has been exactly what the direction the market's going. We're seeing organizations move away from the ERP systems. Therefore, and in this case, we saw LAWSON acquired by a capital firm. And we saw SuccessFactors acquire Plateau to really create the largest, as of customer base today, the largest talent management cloud vendor in the world. When you look at that, you say, wow, 20 hours, that defines the market. The market is moving away from these on-premise systems and move towards these cloud-based software as a service type applications. Now, there's a lot of issues that organizations have to deal with when they go to the cloud that a lot of people don't think about. It sounds easy just to go to the cloud. Innovation is still very, very difficult. How I make this simple is still very, very difficult. How I have different user interfaces still is very, very difficult. But when you look at the capabilities that a Plateau and SuccessFactors combined bring to the market, you really start to say, wow, I'll have a whole new set of chemicals to experiment with from a management, learning management standpoint in the cloud. And once again, SuccessFactors and Plateau aren't the only one. This is the most recent one. You can take what Cornerstone's done. You can take what Workday's done. You can take what Teleo's done. You can take what Software's done. Say these guys are moving in this direction to this cloud-based, unified human capital management solution. Each of them having some trends. Where more and more organizations say we don't have the money to support on-prem systems. Our IT organization isn't going to do it any longer. And even if they did, the last 10 years has been transactional focused, and we've never gotten to the strategic. Now, a huge blanket statement on both sides, I understand, but to me, the oxymoronic nature of these two things in the last 24 hours really defines where the market is.
You know, if I'll add my 2 cents here, Jason, I think these are two very different positions. One on one side with LAWSON that is really focused on trying to get some scale and upsell on a lot of, or I use the word legacy-based technologies versus success factors and plateau that are very much focused on delivering the future based on cloud computing, the future based on really a course of integrated products. And the things that I think are important to understand is how are these divergent paths happening, why they're important, but what it ultimately means to the customer. And one of the big things I always encourage people to dig under the covers is where are they investing their dollars. I think what you'd see from both of these is the investment of R&D dollars, the investment of other dollars are very, very different. And I tend to prefer companies that are investing into product and continuing to integrate or add new capabilities as they continue to evolve.
So, JC, a couple other questions I want to make sure that we address. And the one I'm going to address first is the cloud is not proven as a profitable model for the vendors. What if they can't make money within this delivery model? I definitely have a take on that. Do you want to take it first?
I don't know if I have enough time, but I think what we're seeing is cloud from a perspective is not necessarily focused on profitability. I think a lot of the organizations, a lot of the vendors could be very profitable very quick, but what they're trying to do is capture market share because it is a very, very, very big market. So a success factor is a cornerstone on demand, I frankly think, because they have a lot of visibility in their subscription-based model. If they can become profitable overnight. I don't think that's what they care about. I don't think that's what their shareholders care about because there's a huge, huge market that they're trying to address.
Another question that came in I want to make sure I address is, this concept of, I'd like Jason to address which vendors are winners and losers from these emerging trends. And I think what's really, really important here, and I don't mean to sound too wishy-washy, but vendors are doing a really good job at reinventing themselves. And there's people that thought success factors was a one-trick pony, excuse my language, 18 months ago. All they did was performance management, and when you look at them today, they've completely transformed. When Oracle Fusion, one say, wow, Oracle Fusion's never coming out. Oracle Fusion's starting to get some traction. Some of the work SAP is doing in design is getting some traction. So, I hate to. There's a couple that have said, give me your crystal ball. There's a couple people that said, which vendors are the winners and losers? It's really, really hard. It's really, really hard to do. But it is probably the most important thing to do is to stay on top of it and watch it. Watch the signs, get development strategies, get the development roadmaps, understand how they're shifting to the new technologies, such as cloud, such as platform as a service. When they talk about their implementations, are they talking about interfaces? Or are they talking about integrations? When implementations are being done, are they still using the same methodology as was used 15 years ago before the Internet was even around? Or have those implementation models been transformed? All those questions help you understand, at least today, where the losers are. But once there's a whole, this year I predict there's still a whole bunch of stuff that's going to happen here with some of the vendors that's going to make this even more interesting.
Yeah, and Jason, if I'll add, for me, actually, I think that it's fair on who some of those winners and losers are. But I also think that what's interesting that a lot of people don't necessarily see today is that a lot of those quote legacy-based vendors are doing some amazing things. And I'll give you a couple of examples here. ADP, right? ADP, I think, is actually on the edge around mobility that no one really sees today. Kronos is the same way. And some amazing things around use of technology. So, this isn't say that, some of these more traditional vendors can't get to speed really quickly because they are. But I do think there's, a couple of, I think, is one is around cloud computing. I am sold that cloud computing is a model of the future. And when I say cloud computing, it's very simple. It needs to be a single platform, multi-tenant. And that's going to be a core building block for a lot of organizations moving forward, in my opinion.
Great. So, Blake, I know it's always dangerous to put our email addresses and phone numbers up here and things like that, but I see we've done it, which is great. And JC and I are pretty much 24/7 people, so if you have any feedback or questions or want to get more detailed on anything that that was said, please shoot an email anytime. We'll be happy to answer it. And Blake, I'll turn it back over to you for a wrap-up. But thank you, JC. This is always fun working with you.
Thank you, Jason, and thank you to everyone who attended today's webinar. There were many questions, both in the Q&A and chat panel, as well as on the live stream on Twitter. Any questions not addressed throughout today's presentation will definitely be addressed following. Again, to reiterate Jason's point, if you'd like to continue the discussion with either Jason, their contact information is here on the screen. And for additional resources and information about relevant industry acquisitions and how they can potentially impact your organization, visit K on Demand, as we have some really informative information there about all of the industry acquisitions. And thanks again for joining us, and everybody have a great day.